Good afternoon, welcome back. This is a personal response to TheoSkeptoMai-0123. I've seen you before, Mr. TheoSkepto. You have a brand new account. Did you get blocked on your previous account? That would be my first question. So that's why I blocked you on this account. Your account is 3 days old, and I don't trust you because I've seen your name, and the last time I saw you, you were extremely rude, and that's not the kind of thing I allow on my channel. But I'm going to answer your question anyway, because I feel like, even though it came from you, a bad person, it was a good question. You said to me, have I actually seen or had an experience with God or the Holy Spirit personally? And I suppose the reason you're asking this is so that you can say, no, you don't, you've never even seen God. But I have. And you would have known this if you'd have checked my previous videos. I did a video, when was it? It was a year ago when someone last asked me this. 13 months ago, someone said to me, Daily Corvid, all your big talk about how you know God and you love God and you used to be an atheist, now you're a Christian, have you ever seen God personally? Expecting the answer no, and I was like, yes, I have. That's what made me into a Christian, because I was an atheist. Like a really gobby atheist for the longest time, like you, TheoSkepto. Like, that's why I've got all the atheist books, that's why I can defeat all the atheist arguments. That's why I don't respond to your little tricky tactics, because I was using those. I was that guy. I was that guy for years. I was doing it when you were like 3. You were still pooping your pants when I was out doing those conferences. So I have more experience as an atheist than you have, but I also have experience as a Christian. So I'm going to retell you about my experience of meeting God. I had a project website, and my entire goal was to prove that God was nowhere, because I had this idea in my head that all the evils on the world, everything that was going wrong with humanity, could all be traced back to the creation of delusion of religion. That's what I thought. I did the logic trail in my head. I'd kind of proven it to myself in my head. Religion made God and God made evil, so therefore the first man that made religion was the first evil man. And if we can just roll back his mistake of creating religion and convince everyone to ban religions and God and never have them, then we'll all be good and there'll be no more evil. Sounds kind of insane to me, really. I mean, it should sound insane to you as well. But that's genuinely what I believed, and I did believe that. And that was what led me to my website, my work, my Facebook page, and I have like 12,500 people on there, which in 2008, that was like having 1 million people now. You know, 2008, Facebook was a year old, so there was barely anyone on it. And in that first year, I had 12,500 people on my page following my work to prove that God was nowhere, that God didn't exist. That is a huge amount of people for 2008. Way more than I have now. And I actually proved that God did exist. But guess what? Nobody bought it. My entire page, 12,500 people, there was only a handful that actually bought my conclusion off me. The rest of them claimed that it was false. And at the time, I was not just an atheist, I was a vegan, I was a liberal, I was a Palestine supporter. Yes, it was going on all the way back then as well. And I was so driven to prove that God wasn't real so that I could eliminate evil. I thought in my head, if I'm the guy to do this, I will lead the entire species of humanity to good and I will have eliminated evil. I would have made myself into a Jesus character by having completed that work. That's what I thought. And the way that I proved, the way that I was going to prove that God wasn't real, you know, it was the final piece of the puzzle. I'd gone through the Bible, the Quran, I'd spoken to religious people, I'd gone to mosques, temples, I've gone to different churches and things, you know, I've done all the legwork you can do. I've done all the debates. The last piece of the puzzle was, right, I am going to go out and do a prayer. I'm going to do the best, most honest, most accurately done prayer anyone has ever done in their life. And when God doesn't come to me, I will have completed my work to prove that God is nowhere. And then I can proclaim 100%, God is not real. That was my plan. So out I went, found out how to do a prayer, did the fasting, did the preparation, went out into a secluded spot, made sure there was no one else there, left my phone at home, and I said, Dear Lord, please appear to me. If you're real, I really need to know, are you there? Are you this caring, loving God that everyone says you are, who's a religious person? Or am I talking to the clouds like all the atheists believe? And I fully expected that I was going to get no answer. Now, I did this properly. I didn't just say it and then waddle off. I said it sincerely. I treated it as if it was real for the purposes of science, doing it as if a God was real. That was how I looked at it. And I stuck around for half an hour, 40 minutes, something like that. And I was fully expecting nothing to happen, but something did happen. Something did happen. And the thing that happened was the Holy Spirit directly intervened in my life and God appeared to me. And I tested him. I didn't believe it at first. I absolutely didn't believe it, even though I knew it was him that I was looking at. Like, no one who sees Jesus doesn't know that it's Jesus. Like, even atheists. Like, if Jesus is stood in front of you, you know it's him, you believe that it's him. But I couldn't believe myself. That was the thing. I knew it was him. I thought I was going mad. That's how brainwashed I was by the atheist dogma. Even though Jesus was right in front of me, really physically there, like reality was reacting to him. There was birds and there was other animals and they were reacting to him. He had a shadow. He had a voice that I could hear. He touched my shoulder. I could feel his touch on my shoulder. I still couldn't believe that it was him. I thought it was a trick. I thought maybe other humans might have set this up. So I tested him and I tested him and I tested him. I must have tested him half a dozen times. Passed every single one. And after this, I went off. I went straight to my local church, touched the altar, confessed my sins, asked for forgiveness, and I became a Christian that very day. I had many sins to confess. And you know what I realised? Nobody was going to believe me. I knew that straight away before I even told anyone that nobody was going to believe me. Why would they? I'm just a normal, random cretin on the internet. I'm a nobody. I'm a nobody with 12,500 nobodies following him, who has for the last 3 years, or at the time I had been, for the last 3 years been actively trying to prove that God wasn't real, and doing a very good job of it. I'd convinced a lot of people to leave their religion and become atheists. And on the very day when I was going to complete my work for humanity and free people from the brainwashing of religion, prove that God wasn't real, that very day I became a Christian. And then when I announced this on my website, I got deluges of hate mail. I got absolutely threatened with death, and I got told I was a cretinous idiot, and I was a liar, and I must be deluded and mad and on drugs and evil, and I must be getting paid by the Zionists. Yes, that was also a thing back then. But to no avail. I know what I saw and what I felt and what happened. And I was driven to make that testimony, and I've been making that testimony ever since. So that's my experience of meeting God, intervention of the Holy Spirit, direct. And I even though I knew Jesus Christ, because everyone in the West, he's like the most famous guy ever. Even if you've never read a Bible and you see Jesus Christ, you will know this guy is Jesus Christ. You know what he looks like, you know what his voice is like, you know him. But even so, after he left, and I was in the clearing on my own, the tree stump upon which I had been sitting when I had done this prayer had like a watermark on it with lettering, and the lettering was JC. So even though I knew he left that there so that I can say to you, if you have any doubts about my recognition of Jesus, maybe I don't know who he was and I'm just assuming that it's Jesus, he literally left his initials. Really there. Like, it wasn't a delusion, like you could see it. It was on a tree stump, water J.C. This was real. This is not a vision. This is physically in real life now. I can go back to the place this happened today, and I have been back there since. It's a real place that happened. I'm a real person, and it was a real thing that happened. And I knew nobody was going to believe me because it's miraculous. Why would anyone believe a miracle when they don't already know that miracle is real? Especially, and this is the important bit, especially if they have an agenda, and their agenda is that God is not real, because that just totally smashes atheism, doesn't it? And if you're an atheist, you don't want to have atheism taken off you. So you have to then say, this guy's a liar, this guy's on drugs, this guy's delusional, this guy's mad, this guy's making it up, this guy's got an agenda of his own, this guy's getting paid shekels by the evil Zionists. You have to make me a bad person in order to try and invalidate my testimony as bad. That's what you have to do. That's why you asked me, have I ever seen or experienced God or the Holy Spirit directly? Because you were expecting me to say no, because in your head, the answer is no. And I'm here to tell you, brother, the answer is yes. Not just from me, there are millions of people across the world who have had similar experiences. But the only difference is, because of the rising number of very aggressive atheists who have already made their mind up that the answer should be no, they don't open their mouths. Because they don't want to get that weeks and months of hate mail. They don't want to get the threats of death. They don't want to get the being treated like a bad person when they are not. They don't want to have their friends falling out with them simply for the sake of telling people something which benefits them and not the one who's telling it. But I was driven to make that testimony, and I did, and I have, and I am now. So, in conclusion, sorry, I've eaten chili and it's making me have a runny nose. In conclusion, not about me eating chili, about me meeting God. You can do this. Anyone can do this. God is not shy. That's what I realised. Jesus is not shy. If you sincerely, genuinely want him to come to you, and you do a prayer, he will answer that prayer every time. Without a shadow of a doubt, he will answer every single prayer. How do I know this? Because he answered mine. Why the heck would he answer mine if he's not going to answer yours? I'm just an irrelevant nobody, same as you. I was a sinner. I was an atheist. Well, I've made videos about it. If you're really interested about my life story, feel free to go back and check those previous videos. But the point is, if you want to know God personally, directly, if you want that evidence for yourself, I am not the person that you need to be praying to for that evidence. Don't ask me whether I have seen God individually. You, as an atheist, a scientist, you need to go and find the evidence for yourself. You need to get off your little pink rump, my friend, and do what I did. Fast, prepare yourself, go out into the middle of nowhere where you're not going to be interrupted, or scared away, or distracted, where you can absolutely be sure that you'll be able to humble yourself before God, because that's what you need to do. That's what I realised looking back. The reason God appeared to me is because I actually humbled myself as if I was the most religious person on earth ever. Even though I was doing it to prove that he wouldn't appear, even though I was so sure that he wouldn't appear, I had no faith, I treated the prayer, and therefore God, with the utmost respect. And God responded to that humility, that respect, with a blessing. And I was overjoyed. On the way home, I did a jump for joy as if I'd scored a cup final goal. I really did. I must have jumped about 10 foot in the air like this. Yeah! And then I was like, calm down. Anyone sees you, you're going to think you're mad. And then I just went home and went about my day. But my day was a new day. It was completely different, and the rest of my life has been completely different since then. So now, rather than making videos about how much of a intelligent, super atheist I am, and how everyone can eliminate evil on their own, all they need to do is get rid of religion. That's the thing that makes evil. Murders and rapes and child molesting and thieving and adultery, all these things, they're just coming out of the Bible. They're only a thing because of religion. That's what I thought. Now I know. Evil does not come from men. Evil goes into men, but it doesn't come from man. There has never been a baby born that was evil. But many babies become evil as they grow up, and they commit evil things. So that means there was something that happened to that baby to make the baby go from innocent, good, to bad, evil. Something put evil into that child. Religion is the way to recognise that happens and provide a framework of understanding for why that happens, and a protection so that it doesn't happen to you, and so that you are better able to deal with the ones who it does affect. That's religion. So religion describes theft, adultery, murder, child rape, war, diseases, pestilence, earthquakes, all these things, so that you can be prepared for them when they happen, because they do happen, but they don't happen because of the religion. They happen because evil exists, and we are not the ones who are going to defeat evil. Come on, bro, you know this. You can line up the most 100 strongest, most well-equipped, capable fighting men on the planet. Then say to them, I will make you kings if you can come back with the head of evil. If you can decapitate evil and bring me its head, I will make you all the most rich kings on earth. They will not even leave, because they know regardless of the fact that they want that big reward, they can't fight evil on their own. How are they going to do that? How? How can you fight a primordial spiritual evil with a crappy little fleshy body and a gun? You cannot. That's the reason why religion exists. God has charged us to live on earth to try and save people from that evil by building them up spiritually and mentally so that when they are face to face with primordial evil, they are not afraid and they will not be deceived. So they don't need guns or swords or big muscles. The muscles are in here and in here. That's what religion does for you. If you have a true religion, of which there is only one. All the other religions have fragments of this, so they can give you little fragments of truth, but it comes along with a lot of fragments of false inserted stuff. And I would say Islam, Catholicism, JW, Jehovah's Witnesses, all these other religions, they have little fragments in them of the truth, and that's how they make their sales proposition to you. They offer you a fragment of truth, and they say if you take this, you can also have all this false stuff. The same way atheism does. Atheism makes the same claim. Atheism says atheism can eliminate evil. That's what drew me to it in the first place. Atheism says delusions, religions, gods, cults, all this stuff, Jesus, morality, coming from God, all that's a delusion. We can take it away from you. We can give you freedom. And that's good. And then you can give it to others. That's the whole point in atheism. But it's a lie because it doesn't. All atheism does is draw you further and further and further away from the truth in order to try to justify its own position, which I now know through that experience with God is false. Atheism is false. So you can have all the fancy logic, all the fancy discussion, you can have all the intelligent words, you can have all the books in the world, and you can make yourself a little triangle of cards and sit at the bottom and say, I'm the king of atheism. But ultimately, it will fall down the second you go out, like I asked you to do, and you pray to God sincerely, because he will absolutely appear to you, and then all those cards get knocked down in one go. And then you're left with the conclusion of this video. Why are you an atheist? That's what I'd ask you in counter to your question. Why are you an atheist? What good is atheism to the world? Do you think, like I believed, that atheism is trying to uproot evil by getting rid of gods, religions, and religious people? Because I would say to you, atheism has more evil in it than any religion. Think about it. Let's look at the politics of atheism. Diversity. Removal of unique identifiers. Abortion laws. Killing babies in the womb. Marrying men. Destroying the birth rate, limiting the national identity of a country, requiring mass immigration of other people's countries who are at war with you, i.e. Muslims, who want to come here and make everything Sharia. This is the result of atheism. Look at the largest countries in the world who are atheist countries. China, need I say more? Russia, although it claims that it's Orthodox Catholic, it's actually not. Half of Russia is now filled with Muslims and the other half is filled with Catholics who don't call themselves, they don't even consider themselves Christians, neither do we. They have no God. And look at the way they behave. Then you think, well, where are the Christian countries? America. Britain. Nominally. And you can say, but Britain's done evil things politically, America's doing evil things politically. But what you cannot say is that these are not the best places to live. Because you'd be lying. That's not because of atheism. The reason why Britain, America, Canada, Australia are all the best places on earth to live is nothing to do with atheism, it's got everything to do with Christianity. Because the original forefathers of those countries had those experiences where they did pray and God did come to them, or they did experience the Holy Spirit intervention directly, and that led them to very, very quickly spreading the Christian doctrine over the land and making sure no murder, no theft, no adultery, no taking the Lord's name in vain, respect your mother and father, look after your children, all the Christian doctrines. So you atheists take it for granted now, don't you? You say, oh yeah, we would have figured that out on our own. We didn't need God to tell us not to steal, not to murder, not to adulter. We would have got there on our own. Would we though? Let's have a look at history, shall we? That's what you love doing, isn't it, atheists? Go back before Christianity. What were the countries who were the largest and the most successful? Well, it was things like Egypt. Did they have the law that you can't murder? No, they had a law that said you could murder. Did they have a law saying you couldn't steal? No, they had a whole military which was entirely for stealing from other countries. Did they have a doctrine that you can only have one wife and that you need to look after your children as if they are more important than you? No, they didn't. They could have up to 10 wives, and in fact that's why when Muhammad turned up, they were more than happy to become Muslims because they basically did that already. Where are these countries today? Oh, that's right, you don't know because you don't live there. Because you want to live here, in a nice Christian country. So that's the end of this video. The long and short of it is this. God is real, the Holy Spirit is real. You can experience God and the Holy Spirit directly if you want to. All you got to do, humble yourself, go and do an authentic, genuine prayer to God in humility. He will come to you. Don't bring a camera with you. If you're doing it for the sake of making a flipping TikTok, guess what? That's not authentic. If you're doing it for the sake of winning a bet, but you're not planning on actually doing anything with it, that's not authentic. And if you're doing it to prove that God is not real, but the reason you want to prove God's not real is not because you're looking for the truth, then that's not genuine. None of those people will see God. But if you go there with a true, genuine wish for the truth, a good-natured heart, and you are motivated for the right reasons, and you humble yourself in front of God, bang, He will appear to you, and He will prove to you, however many times you test Him, that it is not a delusion, it's not a lie, it's not a trick, it's not a hologram, it's not propaganda, it's not a psyop. It's real. And your life will never be the same, and I hope that's what you do. So, that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed that and you learned something. God bless you all. Check back my previous videos for the details of those. And I'll see you lovely people in the next one. Bye now.